And you know examples of other companies who seriously consider the cultural differences and cultural issues before, during or after the relocation of part of their businesses to other country, and now they perceive it as key success factor?
Well, the most famous case is the Disney Corporation when they decided to open Euro Disney at the time. You know? And it was famous as a flop because they did everything wrong in the first 5 years. You know? They decided, okay, we have a winning formula in the States. We created Disneyland in California. 10 years later, we created Disney World in Florida in a much bigger scale. We have a proven formula. Now let's take it to Europe. Yeah? And they fell flat on their face because the French culture was so much different, more than they expected. And they immediately started getting into trouble. Yeah? The French were not so performance-oriented. So they wanted to have a more relaxed atmosphere, and Disney was all about, okay, we have to perform. Yeah, they talk about the people who are as the cast. Yeah, the people who are working on the park, and they are on stage when they are above ground, and everything, all the logistics is below ground, etc., etc. And the French were more relaxed about it. Plus, the French had unions. Disney had never had to cope with unions, negotiate, to discuss anything. Yeah, and there were just little things like the Americans, the Disney people were very concerned from the very beginning of Disney World in the 50s that amusement parks in the States had a reputation of being seedy places, you know, where people will try to swindle you. You go to an amusement park and you've got those things, you know, where people will, those stands where you throw the ball to topple the bottles, but actually there's something in the ball that makes it kind of swerve, so you never hit the bottles and those kinds of things, you know. So amusement parks were supposed to be, you know, places where some shady character was going to trick you out of your money, yeah. And these shady characters would wear things like tattoos, or earrings, or piercings, or those kinds of things, and that was totally unacceptable. So one of the first ground rules for Disney was this totally clean image. You know, if you work for Disney, the men have to cut their hair very short. The women cannot dye their hair. They cannot wear certain hairdos. There are certain hairdos which are acceptable or they're not. The size of your earrings has to be according to specifications. You can't wear, you know, those hoops. It has to be just something that you apply. Men are not allowed to wear rings. You know? No tattoos, etc., etc. Now, this was the 50s in the U.S. In the 80s in France, everybody was wearing a tattoo. Some of the guys had earrings, and they were not ready to give up on those things. And when Disney simply said, well, if you don't give that up, you can't work here, the union came and said, we're going to picket, we're going on strike. Disney had never faced any of this, right? So after 5 years of conflicts, losing money, etc., then they made the switch. They decided, look, we need to have at least middle management French, because they had brought everybody in to sort of get the thing running, and after we breed a new generation of managers, the Americans can go back home. But then they realized that the American managers were constantly having these conflicts because of basic, simple things that didn't fit. So they decided to start putting French managers, and the French managers said, look, let us handle it. Solar system. Yeah? We comply with the boss, in front of the boss, and then we go out and do something else. Yeah? Now, this time around it worked because the bottom line started to improve. So the Americans said, okay, look, let them do it. It's working. We're making money. Yeah, yeah, but we're not following exactly, you know, the procedures and the brand thing and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, but maybe it has to be a little bit different here. But at least we're out of the red. We're beginning to make money. So they made a lot of concessions to local culture when they realized that doing that improved results.
That's a great example of a corporation gradually and probably slowly, too slowly, responding to the needs of the national sort of culture.